3 days after the attack, Zarathiel found herself in a place she had never expected to be. The palace's military planning center. The room buzzed with activity as Valdorian generals worked alongside human advisors, sharing intelligence and coordinating strategies. She sat at a large table covered with star maps and battle reports, trying to understand the scope of the war that had seemed so distant just a week ago. Across from her, the bulwark explained human military tactics with the same patience he had shown while bandaging her wound. The key to fighting the Karathaks, he was saying, is remembering that they think like machines. They calculate odds, follow programs, and predict outcomes based on previous data. But they can't truly understand sacrifice or the choice to fight when victory seems impossible. Is that why humans are so effective against them? Asked Valandra, who had insisted on attending every planning session since the attack. Partly, the bulwark nodded. But it's also because we learned warfare on a world that tried to kill us every day. Earth taught us that there's always another option, even when all the obvious ones are gone. Zarathiel had been quiet for most of the meeting, but now she spoke up. I want to volunteer. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at her, and she could feel their surprise and concern through her psychic abilities. Volunteer for what, little sister? Valandra asked carefully. To serve as a cultural liaison, Zarathiel said, sitting up straighter in her chair, between humans and Valdorians. If we're going to be allies, we need to understand each other better. Emperor Kelthane, who had been reviewing casualty reports from other systems, looked up at his youngest daughter with surprise. Zarathiel, such a position would require you to work closely with human military units. Are you certain you're prepared for that? She looked directly at the bulwark as she answered. Father, 3 days ago I was terrified of humans because I thought they were monsters. Now I understand that there's something much more frightening than that. They're heroes. And heroes shouldn't have to carry their burdens alone. Ambassador Chun smiled at this. Princess, what exactly do you have in mind? Zarathiel had spent the last 3 days thinking about this. Valdorians have abilities that humans don't. Our psychic gifts let us coordinate across vast distances, share emotions and thoughts, and sense things that normal senses can't detect. But we're not warriors. We've never had to be. She gestured to the star map showing Karathak's territory. Humans have the strength and determination to fight the machines, but you fight as individuals. Valdorians could help you fight as something greater than the sum of your parts. The bulwark leaned forward with interest. You're talking about psychic coordination in battle. Could your people really do that? We do it every day in peaceful situations, Valandra said. Our construction crews can build crystal towers because they share thoughts and emotions. Our medical teams can work together as if they shared one mind. We just never thought to apply these abilities to warfare. Because we never needed to, Zarathiel added. We thought diplomacy and peace could solve every problem. The Karathaks taught us otherwise. General Morthic, who had been skeptical of human methods, now looked thoughtful. Princess, are you suggesting that Valdorian psychics could coordinate human military units? I'm suggesting something more than that, she said. I'm suggesting that we could create mixed units. Human warriors providing strength and determination, Valdorian coordinators providing unity and tactical awareness. Together, we might be able to do things that neither species could achieve alone. The bulwark exchanged a look with Ambassador Chun. Princess, that would require Valdorians to enter active combat zones. Are your people prepared for that kind of danger? Zarathiel thought about the child's toy he carried, about the pain she had sensed behind his determination, about all the innocent people who had already died while her people hid safely in their crystal towers. Some of us are, she said firmly. Some of us have to be. Emperor Kelthane studied his daughter carefully. This is not the timid princess who was afraid to meet our guests just a few days ago. No, father, she agreed. I learned something important from the attack. Being afraid, but doing what's right anyway, isn't cowardice. It's courage. The bulwark smiled at this. Where did you learn that? From watching you, she said simply. You were terrified when you were bandaging my arm. I could sense it through my psychic abilities. You were afraid of hurting me, afraid of being too rough, afraid that your hands, which had just fought machines, might not be gentle enough for medical care. But you did it anyway, because it needed to be done. The room was quiet as everyone processed this insight. Fear isn't the enemy, she continued. Giving up because of fear is the enemy. And I refuse to give up on the innocent people the Karatheks want to enslave or kill. Ambassador Chun nodded slowly. Princess, if you're serious about this Earth, would be honored to work with volunteers from your people. But you should know that it won't be easy. War changes everyone it touches. I know, Zarathiel said. I can sense the changes in all of you. The pain you carry, the memories that hurt, the weight of difficult choices. But I also sense something else, pride. Not the destructive kind, but the pride that comes from knowing you've stood between evil and innocence and you didn't break. She looked around the table at the humans and Valdorians working together. Maybe that's what our peoples can give each other. Humans can teach us to be strong when strength is needed. Valdorians can help you remember that you're not alone in this fight. Over the next hour, they discussed practical details. How many Valdorians might volunteer for such dangerous work? How to train mixed units? How to use psychic coordination without overwhelming human minds that weren't designed for such connections. But the most important moment came near the end of the meeting, when the bulwark asked Zarathiel a direct question. Princess, why are you really doing this? You could stay safe in your palace. No one would blame you for that choice. She thought for a moment before answering. Because I realized something when you told us about the Keltari child. You carry that toy not just to remember her, but to remember everyone like her. Every innocent person who might die if you fail. She paused, then continued. One want to carry that responsibility too. Not because I'm brave, but because someone has to. And if gentle people like me don't stand up to protect other gentle people, then who will? The bulwark reached across the table and, very carefully, shook her hand. Welcome to the war, Princess Zarathiel. As their hands touched, she felt something through her psychic abilities that she had never sensed before. For just a moment, the wall of determination he maintained around his thoughts opened slightly, and she felt what it was like to be him. The constant weight of responsibility, the pain of loss, the exhaustion that came from never being able to rest. But underneath all of that, she sensed something that made her eyes fill with tears. Hope. Despite everything he had seen and lost, despite all the battles yet to be fought, he still believed that innocence could be protected and that good people were worth fighting for. When he released her hand, she was no longer the same princess who had trembled at the thought of meeting a human warrior. She was someone who had chosen to stand beside that warrior, whatever the cost might be. 3 months later, the first joint. Human Valdorian combat unit would win a decisive victory against the Karatheks at the Battle of Rigel Prime. The combination of human determination and Valdorian coordination would prove more effective than anyone had dared hope. But that victory began in this moment, in a palace planning room, when a timid princess chose to become something more than her fears. Outside the crystal windows, the 3 suns of Valdos Prime were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Somewhere among the stars, machines that wanted to destroy all organic life continued their advance. But now, they would face something new. 2 very different species who had learned to fight as one. And at the center of this new alliance stood a human warrior who carried toys to remember the innocent, and a Valdorian princess who had decided that some things were worth being afraid for. The throne room was filled with people when Zarathiel and her sister arrived. Nobles in their finest robes stood along the walls, their skin glowing with nervous energy. Military advisors huddled in groups, talking in hushed voices. At the center of it all sat Emperor Calthane on his crystal throne, looking older than Zarathiel had ever seen him. Her father's usually bright blue skin had faded to a worried gray. The weight of ruling an empire at war was showing on his face. When he saw his daughters enter, he managed a small smile, but Zarathiel could feel his fear through her psychic connection. "Ah, my daughters," he said, gesturing for them to come forward. "Please, take your places." Two smaller thrones sat beside the Emperor's seat. Valandra moved confidently to the first one, but Zarathiel hesitated. The emotions in the room were overwhelming. Fear, hope, desperation, and uncertainty all mixed together and pressed against her mind like a heavy-weight dot as she slowly walked to her throne. She overheard conversations that made her stomach turn. "I heard humans can lift weights. That would crush our bones," whispered Lord Praxthel to his companion. "That's nothing," replied Lady Corwin. "My cousin serves on a research vessel. She said humans can survive in temperatures that would freeze our blood solid or boil it in our veins." "But surely those are just stories," said another noble, though his voice shook with doubt. General Morthic, her father's top military advisor, stepped forward to address the room. His battle-scarred face was grim. "Your Majesty, with your permission, I would like to brief the court on what we know about our guests." Emperor Calthane nodded. "Please proceed, General." The old soldier activated a hologram projector in the center of the room. Images appeared in the air, showing star maps and battle reports. 3 years ago, the Karathex Collective began their expansion into our region of the galaxy. In that time, they have conquered 47 star systems. Billions of lives have been lost. The hologram showed system after system falling to the mechanical invaders. Red dots spread across the star map like a disease. Zarathiel had never seen the full scope of the war before, and it terrified her. Every species they encountered was defeated, the general continued. The Keltari, with their energy shields. The Mordan, with their powerful ships. The Zephyrians, with their psychic warfare. All of them fell within weeks of first contact with the machines. But then, he said, and the hologram changed to show a small blue planet. The Karathex encountered Earth. The image of the human homeworld made several nobles gasp. It looked violent and chaotic. Massive storms covered parts of the surface. The oceans were wild and dangerous. Even from space, it looked like a world that wanted to kill everything on it. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, General Morthic explained. This means it is so dangerous that most galactic species would die within hours of landing there. The gravity is nearly twice what we consider normal. The weather can change from freezing cold to burning hot in a single day. The planet is covered with predators, poisonous plants, and natural disasters. How does anything survive there? Asked Lord Praxthel. That, said the general, is what makes humans so unique. Not only did they survive on Earth, they became the dominant species. They conquered every other predator on their planet. They learned to live in every environment, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. The hologram showed images of humans in various environments. They wore strange coverings to protect themselves. But they were clearly thriving in places that would kill most other beings instantly. When the Karathex reached Earth, the general continued, they expected another easy victory. Instead, they found something they had never encountered before, a species that refused to surrender. The star map changed to show battle reports. Unlike the quick red conquests of other systems, the human space was a chaotic mix of colors, showing ongoing battles and contested territories. The first Karathex invasion fleet was completely destroyed, the general said. Not defeated, not driven away. Destroyed. The humans turned their own cargo ships into weapons. They used their mining equipment as bombs. When their military ships were outnumbered, civilian vessels joined the fight. Zarathiel felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of species would have their farmers and merchants fight against war machines? But that's not the strangest part, the general went on. The humans then did something no other species has done. They followed the remaining Karathek ships back to their bases and began attacking Karathek's territory. The hologram showed human ships pushing into machine-controlled space. It was like watching a small flame spread through a forest. In 3 years of fighting, the general concluded, humans have not only held their ground, but they have liberated 12 systems from Karathek's control. They are the only species in galactic history to not just resist the machines, but to actively hunt them down. The throne room was silent. Everyone stared at the hologram, showing human victories over the seemingly unstoppable machines. Father, Valandra said quietly, how can we trust beings capable of such violence? Before the Emperor could answer, Commander Theklos stepped forward. He was a veteran soldier, scarred from many battles. Your Highness, I fought beside humans at Centauri Station. I can tell you that their violence is not random or cruel. It is focused. What do you mean? Zarathiel asked, speaking for the first time since entering the room. The commander turned to her, and she could feel his respect and awe mixed with lingering fear. Princess, I watched a human soldier take 17 hits from Karathek's energy weapons. His armor was melted, his body was broken, but he kept fighting. Do you know why? Zarathiel shook her head. Because there were Keltari civilians trapped behind enemy lines. He fought until he could clear a path for them to escape. Only then did he allow himself to collapse. And even then, he lived. They don't fight because they enjoy it, the commander continued. They fight because they cannot bear to see others suffer when they have the power to stop it. I have never seen such determination in any other species. General Morthic nodded. The warrior coming with their delegation is known as the Bulwark. He has never retreated from a battle. His mere presence has turned the tide of conflicts that seemed hopeless. Other humans speak of him with the same reverence we might show to our greatest heroes. What makes him so special? Emperor Kalthane asked. According to human military records, the general said, consulting his datapad, he has personally saved over 50,000 civilian lives. He has held defensive positions that should have been impossible to defend. And he has never, in 10 years of combat, allowed a single innocent person under his protection to be harmed. Zarathiel tried to imagine what kind of being could do such things. In her mind, she had pictured humans as savage monsters. But these stories painted a different picture. They were still terrifying, but their terror was directed at protecting others, not destroying them. When will they arrive? She asked. Within the hour, her father replied. Their ship has already entered our system. Zarathiel felt her skin flicker between purple and blue again. She was still afraid, but now there was something else mixed with the fear. Curiosity. What would it be like to meet someone who could face impossible odds and never give up? As if reading her thoughts, Valandra leaned over and whispered, Are you ready for this? Zarathiel looked at the hologram still showing human victories against the machines. Somewhere out there, a human warrior was coming to their palace. A being so determined that even other humans respected him. Soon, she would be in the same room as something that had never known defeat. I don't think anyone could be ready for this, she whispered back. The first sign that the humans had arrived was the change in the palace guards. Zarathiel watched from her throne as even the bravest Valdorian soldiers seemed to grow tense. Their usual graceful movements became stiff and careful. The blue glow under their translucent skin flickered with nervous energy dot through the massive crystal windows of the throne room. She could see the human ship landing in the royal courtyard. It was nothing like the elegant vessels of her people. Where Valdorian ships were smooth and beautiful like floating gems, the human ship looked like it had been built for war. Its gray metal surface was scarred and dented from countless battles. Burn marks from enemy weapons covered its hull like badges of honor. It looks like it should have been destroyed long ago, whispered Lord Prexthil to the noble beside him. Yet, it still flies, replied Lady Corwin. Perhaps that tells us something about its crew. Emperor Calthane stood from his crystal throne. Remember, he announced to the court, these beings have come here in peace. Whatever our fears, we must show them the respect due to potential allies in our darkest hour. Zarathiel tried to follow her father's example and stand tall, but her legs felt weak. Her psychic abilities were already sending warning signals through her mind. Something was approaching that felt different from any consciousness she had ever encountered. The main doors to the throne room were massive slabs of crystal that normally opened silently. Today, they seemed to groan under some invisible weight as they swung wide. The first humans to enter looked almost normal, if strange. They were shorter than Valdorians, and their skin was thick and opaque instead of translucent. They wore formal clothing in dark colors and moved with careful, measured steps. These were clearly diplomats, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. The lead diplomat, a woman with graying hair, stepped forward and bowed to Emperor Calthane. Your Majesty, she said in accented but clear Valdorian, I am Ambassador Sarah Chun of the United Earth Alliance. We are honored by your invitation to discuss our mutual defense against the Karathek's threat. Welcome, Ambassador Chun, the Emperor replied. We are grateful for your willingness to meet with us. But Zarathiel barely heard the diplomatic exchange. Her attention was fixed on the figure that had entered last and now stood silently by the doors. The bulwark. He was not the largest human in the group, but somehow he seemed to fill more space than the others. He wore dark armor that looked like it had been through countless battles. Scratches and scorch marks covered its surface, and she could see where pieces had been repaired or replaced. His helmet was tucked under one arm, revealing a face that was younger than she had expected, but marked by experiences that made him look ancient. What disturbed her most was not his appearance, but what her psychic senses told her about his mind. Where other beings radiated emotions like heat from a fire, he projected something else entirely. It was like trying to read the thoughts of a mountain or an ocean. There was something vast and unmovable about his consciousness that made her abilities recoil in confusion. She reached out with her mind, as she had done thousands of times before with other people, trying to sense his emotions. What she found made her gasp aloud. It wasn't emptiness or coldness that she sensed from him. It was a wall of pure determination so solid that her psychic probes simply bounced off. Behind that wall, she could sense something immense and controlled, like a storm held perfectly still. This was a mind that had been shaped by impossibly difficult choices and had never once chosen the easy path. Her skin went completely white, and the light beneath it dimmed to almost nothing. She gripped the arms of her throne to keep from shaking visibly. Valandra noticed her sister's distress and leaned over to whisper, "What's wrong?" "I can't read him," Zarathiel whispered back, her voice barely audible. "It's like trying to touch a wall made of will itself." The diplomatic conversation continued, but Zarathiel found herself staring at the human warrior. He stood perfectly still, but his eyes moved constantly, cataloging every person in the room, every exit, every potential threat. She realized he was doing what predators did, studying his environment for any sign of danger. When his gaze swept over her, she felt her heart stop for a moment. His eyes were dark and serious, but she caught something unexpected in them. Despite all the stories about human violence and ruthlessness, despite the terror that his very presence inspired, there was something gentle in the way he looked at her. He seemed to recognize her fear and deliberately shifted his stance to appear less threatening. It was a small gesture, but it told her that underneath all that controlled power, he was still thinking about the comfort of others. Ambassador Chun was explaining Earth's position on the war. The Karatheks represent a threat to all organic life in the galaxy, she said. Our intelligence suggests they will not stop until every living system is either enslaved or destroyed. Earth cannot stand alone against such a force forever. Nor can Valdos Prime, Emperor Kelthane replied. We have heard remarkable stories of human courage in battle. But we have also heard, he paused, choosing his words carefully, concerning reports about human methods of warfare. For the first time, the bulwark spoke. His voice was quiet, but it seemed to fill the room. Your Majesty, war is never gentle. The Karatheks have made it clear that they offer only two choices, submission or death. We have chosen a third option, victory. The simple way he said it sent a chill through the throne room. There was no boasting in his voice, no anger or bloodlust. Just a statement of fact delivered with absolute certainty. How can we be certain that human intensity will not be turned against peaceful species once this war is over? Asked General Morthic. The warrior turned to look at the general directly. Because, he said, we have never started a war. Every battle we fight is to protect someone who cannot protect themselves. Every weapon we carry exists to defend those who ask for our help. He gestured to the room full of nobles and officials. Look around this room. Do you see any weapons pointed at you? Any threats? We came here asking for alliance, not demanding submission. Zarathiel found herself studying his face as he spoke. Despite the scars and the hardness around his eyes, she could see the truth of his words. This was someone who carried violence as a burden, not a joy. What proof can you offer of human intentions? Emperor Kelthane asked. The bulwark was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small object. He held it up so everyone could see it clearly. It was a child's toy. A small, colorful doll that looked like it had been well loved. Its fabric was faded and worn from being held countless times. This belonged to a Keltari child named Vexily, he said. She was 6 years old when the Karatheks attacked her colony. I found her hiding in the ruins after the machines had moved on. She was injured, scared, and completely alone. The throne room was completely silent now. Everyone was listening. I carried her 17 kilometers to safety, he continued, through enemy territory while dodging Karatheks patrols. She was too scared to let go of this toy, so I carried both of them. When we reached the evacuation site, she gave it to me. She said it was so I wouldn't forget her. He looked directly at Emperor Kelthane. Your Majesty, I fight the machines because they would turn children like Vexily into slaves or kill them for being inconvenient. I carry this toy into every battle to remind myself what I'm protecting. Zarathiel felt tears forming in her eyes. Through her psychic abilities, she could sense the deep emotions he kept hidden behind his wall of determination. This was someone who had seen too much pain and had dedicated his life to preventing more of it. She realized that her fear was still there, but it had changed. She was no longer afraid that he would hurt innocent people. She was afraid of what it must cost him to carry such responsibility. The bulwark returned the toy to his pouch and stepped back to his position by the door. Ambassador Chun, Emperor Kelthane said, I believe we have much to discuss. The diplomatic meeting had been going well for over an hour. Ambassador Chun and Emperor Kelthane discussed trade agreements, shared technology, and military coordination. Zarathiel found herself relaxing slightly as she listened to the peaceful negotiations. The human diplomats were nothing like the monsters from the stories. They were careful, respectful, and genuinely seemed to want to help. Even the bulwark, despite his intimidating presence, had not moved or spoken since sharing the story of the Keltari child. That's When the crystal walls of the throne room exploded inward, the attack came so suddenly that Zarathiel's mind couldn't process what was happening at first. Chunks of crystal flew through the air like deadly rain. Valdorian nobles screamed and dove for cover as mechanical forms burst through the smoking holes in the walls. Karathek's infiltrator drones. They looked like metal spiders the size of large dogs, with glowing red sensors and razor-sharp limbs. Their chrome bodies reflected the chaos of the throne room as they scuttled across the floor at impossible speeds. "Protect the royal family," shouted General Morthic, but his voice was almost lost in the sound of weapons fire and screaming. The Valdorian guards reacted quickly, forming a defensive circle around the thrones. But Zarathiel could sense their terror. These were ceremonial guards, trained for parades and formal events, not for combat against killing machines. Through the chaos, she saw her father being rushed toward a secure exit by his bodyguards. Valandra was fighting beside the palace soldiers, using her psychic abilities to confuse the attackers. But there were too many of them. A Karathek's drone broke through the defensive line, its red sensors fixed directly on Zarathiel. She tried to run, but her formal robes tangled around her legs. The machine moved faster than anything she had ever seen, leaping through the air toward her with its blade arms extended. That's when the bulwark moved. Zarathiel had thought the infiltrator drones were fast, but the human warrior was something else entirely. He crossed half the throne room in seconds, sliding under the leaping drone and striking it from below with a weapon that had appeared in his hand, as if by magic. The machine crashed to the floor in pieces, but 3 more were already converging on their position. What followed was unlike anything Zarathiel had ever seen. She had watched Valdorian soldiers train, with their graceful movements and precise techniques. The bulwark fought like a natural disaster with a purpose. He used everything around him as a weapon. A broken piece of crystal became a projectile that shattered a drone sensor cluster. A fallen column became cover that he used to redirect another machine into his waiting blade. When a drone tried to attack him from above, he caught it midair and used its own momentum to slam it into its companion. But what impressed her most was how he fought smart. Not just hard. He positioned himself so that the attacking drones got in each other's way. He used their own weapons against them, redirecting energy blasts to damage other machines. Every movement served multiple purposes, and nothing he did was wasted effort. Within minutes, the immediate threat was over. Broken machinery littered the throne room floor, sparking and twitching with dying electrical impulses. The bulwark immediately turned to scan for more threats, his weapons still in hand. Only when he was certain the area was secure did he approach Zarathiel. "Are you injured, Your Highness?" he asked, his voice calm despite having just fought a deadly battle. Zarathiel tried to speak, but found her voice caught in her throat. She was trembling, not from the attack, but from what she had just witnessed. This was what human warfare looked like, and it was both terrifying and magnificent. I'm not hurt," she finally managed to say. He knelt beside her, carefully checking her for injuries, despite her words. His hands were gentle as they examined a small cut on her arm where a piece of crystal had grazed her. "This needs to be cleaned," he said, producing a small medical kit from his armor. "May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. As he carefully cleaned and bandaged the minor wound, she realized something that shattered her previous understanding of humans. His hands, which had just destroyed several war machines with ruthless efficiency, were now trembling slightly as he tended to her small injury. The same focus and determination he had used in battle was now directed entirely toward making sure she was safe and comfortable. "You're scared of hurting me," she said, the words coming out before she could stop them. He paused in his work and looked up at her. "I'm scared of hurting anyone who doesn't deserve it," he said simply. Through her psychic abilities, she could now sense something she had missed before. Behind his wall of determination, there was pain. Deep, constant pain from all the things he had seen and done. He carried the weight of every life he hadn't been able to save, every choice he'd had to make in war. "Does it ever stop hurting?" she asked quietly. He finished bandaging her arm before answering. "No," he said. "But that's why we fight. So that innocent people like you don't have to carry this kind of pain." "But who protects you?" she asked. The question seemed to surprise him. He was quiet for a long moment, and she could sense him considering whether to answer honestly. "Nobody," he finally said. "That's not how this works." "That's not fair," she said, and meant it. He smiled then, and it transformed his entire face. The hardness around his eyes softened, and for a moment he looked like the young man he actually was, instead of the legend everyone feared. "Fair isn't really the point," he said. "What matters is that when children like that Keltari girl I told you about go to sleep at night, they're safe. What matters is that princesses can grow up in crystal palaces instead of hiding in ruins." Around them, the throne room was being secured. Valdorian soldiers were checking for more infiltrators, while medical teams tended to the injured. Her father and sister were safe, she could see, though both looked shaken by the sudden attack. "How did you move so fast?" she asked. "Practice," he said. "And knowing that I couldn't let anything happen to the people I was protecting." "The people you were protecting," she repeated. "Including me?" "Especially you," he said. "You're exactly the kind of person this war is being fought to protect. Someone gentle and good who should never have to see this kind of violence." She looked at the broken machines scattered around the throne room, then back at him. "But you see this kind of violence all the time." "Yes," he said. "So you don't have to." The simple truth of it hit her like a physical blow. This man, this warrior who had seemed so terrifying when he first entered the throne room, was volunteering to carry all the darkness and pain of war so that people like her could continue to live in the light. "I misjudged you," she said. "All of us did. We thought humans were dangerous because you were violent and cruel. But you're dangerous because you care too much, aren't you?" He stood up, offering her his hand to help her rise. "Caring isn't dangerous, Your Highness. Not caring is what makes the machine so terrifying." As she took his hand and let him help her to her feet, she realized that her fear had completely changed. She was no longer afraid of him. She was afraid for him. Afraid of what it must cost to live with such responsibility, and afraid of what the galaxy would lose if something happened to people like him. "The negotiations," she said suddenly. "Will this attack change anything?" The bulwark looked around the damaged throne room, then back at her. "It should make the negotiations easier," he said. "Your people have now seen what the Karatheks are willing to do, and what we're willing to do to stop them." Ambassador Chun approached them, looking relieved that both the princess and her guardian were unharmed. "Your Highness," she said to Zarathiel, "I hope this incident hasn't turned you against the idea of working with Earth." Zarathiel looked at the bulwark, then at the ambassador. "Quite the opposite," she said. "I think I'm beginning to understand what kind of allies we need." Princess Zarathiel stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the beautiful crystal spires of the royal palace. The towers reached high into the purple sky of Valdos Prime, sparkling like jewels in the light of their 3 suns. She had lived her whole life in this palace, safe behind its glowing walls. At 22 years old in human years, she was still considered young for a Valdorian. Her people lived for hundreds of years, and she was the baby of the royal family. Her skin was pale and almost see-through, like all Valdorians. When she was happy or excited, soft blue light would glow beneath her skin. When she was scared or sad, the light would turn purple and dim. Right now, her skin was flickering between blue and purple, because she felt both curious and nervous. Zarathiel had the gift that many Voldorians possessed. She could sense the emotions and thoughts of others around her. It was like hearing whispers in her mind. Usually, this ability made her feel connected to people. But today, it made her more worried than usual. The palace was buzzing with activity. Servants hurried through the halls, carrying important documents. Guards stood more stiffly at their posts. Everyone seemed tense, and their emotions pressed against her mind like storm clouds. Something big was happening, and nobody would tell her what it was. She touched the smooth crystal surface of her window and tried to read the thoughts of the people below in the courtyard. The gardeners were worried. The cooks were nervous. Even her father's advisors, who usually felt confident and calm, now radiated anxiety that made her stomach twist. A soft knock came at her door. "Come in," she called, turning from the window. Her older sister, Princess Valandra, entered the room. Valandra was everything that Zarathiel was not. She was tall, confident, and brave. She had trained with the Royal Guard and often accompanied their father to important meetings. The blue light under her skin always glowed steady and bright, never flickering with uncertainty like Zarathiel's did. "Little sister," Valandra said, sitting on the edge of Zarathiel's bed. "Father wants to see you in the throne room." Zarathiel's skin immediately turned a deeper purple. "Why? Did I do something wrong?" "No, nothing like that." Valandra's voice was gentle, but Zarathiel could feel her sister's nervousness. "There are visitors coming to the palace. Important visitors. Father wants the whole royal family present when they arrive." "What kind of visitors?" Zarathiel asked, moving away from the window to sit beside her sister. Valandra was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was lower than usual. "Humans." The word hit Zarathiel like a cold wave. Her skin went completely white, and the light underneath dimmed to almost nothing. "Humans? Here? In our palace?" "Yes," Valandra nodded. "They're coming for a diplomatic meeting. Father thinks we might need their help with the war against the Karatheks." Zarathiel had heard whispers about the war, though her family tried to keep such dark news away from her. The Karatheks Collective was a group of machines that had been conquering star systems across the galaxy. They turned living beings into slaves or destroyed them completely. Many peaceful species had already fallen to their metal armies, but humans? The stories she had heard about humans were almost as terrifying as the ones about the machines. "Are the stories true?" she whispered. "About what humans are like." Valandra's emotions were complex, mixing fear with something that might have been respect. "Some of them, yes. Humans come from a world so dangerous that most species cannot even visit it safely. They call it a death world. The gravity is crushing. The weather can kill you. The animals are all predators. Even the plants are poisonous." Zarathiel shivered. "How can anything live in a place like that?" "That's what makes humans so frightening," Valandra explained. "They don't just live there. They became the strongest predators on their whole planet. And now they're out here, among the stars. And they're the only species that has been able to fight the Karatheks machines and win. But surely they can't be that scary," Zarathiel said, though her voice shook. "They're just another species, right?" Valandra stood up and walked to the window. "Last month, I spoke with Commander Theklos. He fought alongside human soldiers in the Battle of Centauri Station. He said, watching humans fight was like watching natural disasters with purpose. They don't stop. They don't surrender. Even when they're injured, they keep fighting until either they win or they die." Zarathiel's skin was now so pale it was almost transparent. "Why would Father invite creatures like that here?" "Because," Valandra said sadly, "creatures like that are the only ones who can save us from the machines." She turned back to her younger sister. "One of them is coming with their diplomats. A warrior. They call him the Bulwark. Even other humans respect him. The soldiers say his presence alone can change the outcome of a battle. Zarathiel stood on shaky legs. The thought of being in the same room as such a being made her feel sick with fear. Her psychic abilities were already recoiling at the idea. What if she couldn't control her gift around something so alien and violent? "I don't think I can do this," she whispered. Valandra came over and took her sister's hands. "You can. You're braver than you think. And Father needs us both there. This meeting could decide the fate of our entire empire." Zarathiel looked into her sister's eyes and saw the truth there. This wasn't just about diplomatic manners or royal duty. Their people were in real danger, and these humans might be their only hope for survival. "Will you stay close to me?" she asked. "Of course," Valandra promised. "But Zarathiel, you must remember something important. No matter how frightening they seem, these humans are here to help us. They're on our side." Zarathiel nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it. How could something so dangerous really be on their side? As they left her room and walked through the crystal hallways toward the throne room, she tried to calm her racing heart. Soon she would meet a human warrior face to face. The very thought made even her brave sister nervous. And if a creature like the Bulwark could make seasoned soldiers shake with fear, what would happen to someone like her? The purple light under her skin grew dimmer with each step.